This show is brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin. I'm your host, Jeff Dee. My co-host is Martin Wagner.
Hi.
Hi, Martin. There you go. And that's me over here. Today's guest is a bunch of folks from the Atheist Community of Austin. And there's more coming as we try to get organized here desperately last minute. We are live June 25.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
The Atheist Community of Austin is a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday morning at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop, 307 West 5th Street at 10:30 a.m. right after this show, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m. in the Longhorn Room of Furs Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Our next lecture will be held on July 2. And does anybody know who the speaker is going to be?
Yes, you are part of the panel on
Am I?
where we're going to talk about the Respect Our Constitution.
Oh, right. Okay, we're going to have a panel discussion about the recent nonpartisan political efforts for the sake of the church-state separation. Let's see. ACA board meetings take place at noon right after our regular meeting on the second Sunday of every month. The next board meeting will be on July 9. And once every 3 months, in celebration of the solstice or equinox or what have you, we invite members of the ACA to the studio to form a live audience. And here they is. Hi, folks.
And so far, and none of them
have some opening
have
music.
had
I'm
their
so
coffee.
thrown.
Absolutely none of them. Okay.
Those of you who shop at Randall's can give Randall's our ID number, which is 5158, and have 1% of your purchase donated to the Atheist Community of Austin. The Godless Gamers meet every Monday night at 7 p.m. at the home of Vic Farrow. For more information, you can call our voicemail at 371-2911 or visit our website at www.atheist-community.org. This show can also be seen on the internet. Set your browser to spring.net. And if you decide to call in from long distance, the number to call is... Can we get the number on the screen? Okay.
Although we don't know.
This is a live call-in show. To call the show and get on the air, it's area code 512-472-2255, and we'll try to repeat that. Boy, that's nice big lettering, Vic. That might actually be visible on the web. Cool. All right, so that's everything I got. What do you got, Martin?
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Continuing to work on the assumption that we're on the air, I have this morning's news.
Well, it's the lack of the opening music that I think is making it seem kind of surreal.
Well, there's just that, and well, there I am anyway. So anyway, we are
definitely seeing ourselves on the monitor here in the studio,
and
which
that's
is something.
so far a good thing. So we'll just keep working on that. And big news week, folks.
Oh, so big.
Yes. School prayer out.
You go, Supreme Court. Woohoo!
You all read it. It was headlines all across the country Tuesday, but I'm going to read it again just to piss off the Christians. No. Actually, it shouldn't, because this was a victory not only for people who choose not to be religious like ourselves, but for religious people as well. This is a victory for religious freedom, and not for the government is going to hammer one religion into everyone's heads, and the heck with all the rest of you. So, Christians, if you aren't aware that this was a victory for you as well as us, you just don't get it.
It's not a victory for us anyway. All we have ever asked for is for the Constitution of our nation to be upheld. That's it.
That's
okay?
it. That's
this is
right.
not. This has nothing to do with atheism. Those were deists that wrote that Constitution mostly, and keeping religion out of school is not for the sake of promoting atheism, which it doesn't, because merely not talking about God is not atheism.
Right.
The reason for the separation of church and state is to keep you different types of Christians off each other's back.
As well as Jews' backs and Muslims' backs and Hindus' backs.
Well, that too.
Yeah. So, anyway, just going to recap the general headlines of it. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled last week the prayer does not belong in public schools, even if students initiate and lead the prayers. High Court ruled 6-3 in a Texas case that public schools cannot allow student-led prayer before high school football games, a decision that reinforces the wall between church and state erected by the First Amendment. The ruling came in Santa Fe Independent School District versus Jane Doe, a case involving the Santa Fe Independent School District in Galveston, Texas, which allowed student-initiated and student-led prayer to be broadcast over the public address system before high school football games, where it belongs.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, just to clarify now, it's not that they can't allow prayer. You can pray anytime you want.
Over the PA system.
But not over the PA system using
Right.
a government-sponsored venue where you have a captive audience and government equipment and a government-sponsored event. No, you can't do it.
Can't be on the state's time and the taxpayer's dime.
Right.
Central question was whether allowing prayer violates the First Amendment's Establishment Clause, which states that Congress, quote, shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Quote, we recognize the important role that public worship plays in many communities, as well as the sincere desire to include public prayer as part of various occasions so as to mark those occasions' significance, Justice John Paul Stevens wrote for the majority. I can't talk to Libya this morning, it's really awkward. But such religious activity in public schools as elsewhere must comport with the First Amendment, he added. 2 students and their mothers filed suit in 1995 and were joined by the ACLU. The students, one Mormon and one Catholic, and their mothers were not named in court papers. The 4,000 student Southern Texas School District until 1995 had a policy in which students elected student council chaplains to deliver prayers over the public address system before the start of high school football games. While the lower courts were considering the legal challenge, the school district adopted a new policy under which student-led prayer was permitted but not mandated. Students were asked to vote on whether to allow prayers and to vote again to select the person to deliver them. So they still got the prayers anyway because no one who would get up and not say a prayer was voted in. The lower court retooled that policy to allow only non-sectarian, non-proselytizing prayer, whatever that means. Dear whoever,
Just
thanks
generically Christian.
Yeah. Dear fill in the blank, fill in the blank, whatever. Yeah. Anyway, the ACLU said the ruling was a victory for freedom of religion. This decision, quote, comes as a welcome relief for the families who were ostracized and harassed because they did not care to participate in the majority's choice of prayer.
Well, if you think that those families are now
they're not going to get it off easy.
I think their troubles are just starting.
Oh yeah, it's not going to be pleasant.
The reaction from the local, extremists is not going to be pleasant.
Oh no, and it isn't. I mean, they're already the fundies are just flipping out over this hardcore. And to finish up, quote, as the court recognized today, religious belief and expression is flourishing in our country precisely because America has avoided the mistakes of the other countries and resisted the temptation of the government to endorse religion. And we've just been told that we don't have phones today.
Yeah, but I've heard that before.
Yeah, well,
and
we
it
don't
turned
know.
out not to be true. Like half an hour into the show, we got phones. Now, maybe that won't happen today.
Yeah.
If you hear something you hear us say something you don't like, folks, go ahead and try to call.
Yeah.
You might not get through, but
and hopefully the guys will keep working on it, even though it doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Well, I'm glad I brought a little extra. Go on.
Yeah,
with your
but anyway,
news. I got a little more after that.
Okay, good. Got a little more news. I guess in something of what you might consider a related issue, France have gotten really tough on cults. France has adopted a very tough anti-sect law. The French National Assembly adopted Europe's toughest anti-sect legislation Thursday, creating a controversial new crime of, quote, mental manipulation, punishable by a maximum fine of $75,000 and 5 years imprisonment.
Whoa!
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah, the move was applauded by Alain Vivian. I'm going to just make a fool of myself and say it that way. Head of a government committee that has identified 173 dangerous quasi-religious groups in France, but was denounced by both the Church of Scientology and the Unification Church.
Oh, what a surprise!
As fascist, anti-democratic, and in breach of basic human rights laws. Since
free speech means we should be free to be able to manipulate people.
Yeah, and have them drink cyanide and castrate themselves. Current French law described as, quote, inadequate to deal with increasingly sophisticated and manipulative groups by Catherine Picard, one of the legislators who proposed the bill, allows sect activities to be prosecuted for traditional crimes such as incitement to murder, sexual assault, fraud, and the abuse of vulnerable individuals. The new law allows judges to order the dissolution of any sect whose members are convicted of a criminal offense. It also bans sects from advertising and prohibits them from opening missions or touting for new members near schools, hospitals, or retirement homes. But the law's key weapon is the new crime of mental manipulation, defined as, quote, exercising within a group whose activities are aimed at creating or exploiting psychological dependence, heavy and repeated pressure on a person, or using techniques likely to alter his judgment so as to induce him to behave in a way prejudicial to his interests.
Do they count Christianity?
So,
well, here's
is
the
this
thing
not going to
now.
keep Christianity out?
Hang on. They carefully...
There's a clause.
They
Okay.
carefully fiddled with that. A Justice
All right.
Ministry spokeswoman said the legal definition had been prepared carefully to ensure that it could not be applied to legitimate churches. Folks, all churches are equally legitimate.
Now, wait a minute. So that you just read the entirety of the law, and they're claiming that that won't apply to legitimate churches?
Some Catholic leaders have expressed reservations about the law, saying that may lead to, quote, overzealousness and judicial excess, as well as discrimination against genuine religions.
Yeah,
Folks,
excess in defending manipulable people from being unfairly manipulated.
Folks,
yeah, we don't want to have too much of that.
No.
We don't want to protect people from unfair mental manipulation too much.
Yeah. Folks,
Good
all
grief.
religions are equally genuine. Quote, this
Still.
is a steep and slippery slope for democracy, said Danielle Gounod, a spokeswoman for Scientology, which is not recognized as a religion in France. Quote, in Western Europe, the only regime so far to pass a law on mental manipulation was the fascist government of Mussolini in an attempt to get rid of the communists. Well, boo-hoo, sniffle. So, yeah, this is pretty heavy stuff, and, so far, thumbs up for the French. They may
even though it's a little, wishy-washy around the edges.
Well, they may eat snails, make incomprehensible movies, and only bathe on the occasional Tuesday, but at least they have their mind in the right place when it comes to dealing with funky
And it's certainly
cults.
a better response to mass weirdness movements than what they did in China, where they simply, they picked the Falun Gong and just said, well, you guys are illegal.
Yeah.
Without any justification.
Yeah, you'll be our scapegoats. And just the final news piece, of course, is that tomorrow we get the announcement that the Human Genome Project is finished. And so that should be very exciting news. We will see what that comes from. The exciting thing, of course, is that this could very well now lead to new treatments and wipe out a lot of things that are plaguing us these days. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, nasty diseases, things that might be genetically inherited. Some alarmists are worried that this is going to turn the world into Gattaca, and we're all going to be these, beautiful vapid Aryans like Ethan Hawke. But it's
Only he wasn't one.
well, yeah, or Uma. But I think that's probably a bit on the paranoid side. It's interesting to see what the long-term repercussions will be of this. So
Wow.
that is the news for today.
Cool. Now
there
you
we
missed
are.
one thing. There was another Supreme Court thing.
Oh,
that
that's
came
right.
up.
You don't.
There was a second case. Do you want me to
Go ahead.
If you know it, go
Well,
ahead.
if it may be the same, if it's the same
Okay,
one.
if it's the same one, then fine.
I don't
The Supreme Court also refused to review a lower court decision,
Yes.
which said that it is illegal for the schools to make a point of issuing a disclaimer, saying that that there are other ways of looking at the origin of man besides evolution.
That's right.
It is not the school's business to point out non-scientific views of things during a science class. And so yay Supreme Court for that one too.
Yeah, that's very good. So
Was that the one?
that was the one.
Okay.
The very one. Forgot to mention.
I also have something. I get a mailing from Rationalist International, which is a they don't really describe themselves here in this thing. It's an email.
Thing.
It's a weekly email from this organization, Rationalist International, which is based in India. And they do more international kind of rationalism and atheism news. Let me just read some of these since we need to fill a lot of airtime. Egyptian author Salah Eddin faces trial for atheist writings. Prosecutors in Cairo have put Salah Eddin Moshen, Egyptian writer, in detention since April on trial after he admitted under questioning this year that he did not believe in Islam and sought to promote secular thought in 4 recent books. Prosecuting lawyer Ashraf al-Ashmawi, pardon me, told the court that Salah Eddin is, quote, sick in the heart and an example of atheism, unquote. Salah Eddin, facing trial for atheism against Islam, is building his defense in the right to free speech. Quote, I have an opinion, and I expressed my opinion in these books, Salah Eddin said in court. In Egypt, Islam is the only official religion, and 90% of all Egyptians are Sunni Muslims. Judicial authority in Egypt is vested in an independent judicial system, which is based on Sharia and English and French laws.
Well, that's, when you live in that sort of culture, that's...
So it's of course not just Christians who give atheism a bad rap. At least they have not recently put any of us in prison for it.
Yeah. But that could be the next step if Robertson and his ilk get their way.
Oh, here we go. This is actually a kind of a local story, but I got it from this group from India. 44 former students of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, a leading Hindu religious organization, have filed a $400 million lawsuit in a federal court in Dallas, accusing senior gurus of sexual, physical, and emotional torture of minor boys and girls ranging in age from 3 to 18 years.
Great.
And there's a laundry list of exactly what those charges are, and it's quite nasty. I'm going to skip that for the sake of the children in our audience.
It's depressing.
It is believed that the facts as they are presented will reveal more than 1,000 victims, many of whom have already taken their lives or are today emotionally and socially dysfunctional. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been listed as the lead defendant, while 17 members of its governing body commission have also been named as defendants. The first Gurukul established by ISKCON commenced operation in 1972 and was located in Dallas. By 1978, there were a total of 11 Gurukuls. I guess that's traditional schools, that means. There were a total of 11 of them in North America. To avoid policing and scrutiny by U.S. child protection agencies, the suit says, the group took a large portion of its boarding school activities overseas to India. In India, they managed at least 2 profoundly abusive boarding schools for boys. So it's
just gets
nasty.
Grimmer and grimmer.
Just an echo of the kinds of abuses we have heard of from various Christian schools.
Yeah.
Again in Texas. What's up with that?
It's I don't know if it's just good old, homespun Southern values or...
Oh boy.
But, what exactly is Krishna consciousness?
Krishna?
Yes, well, I know, but I mean, what is that state of consciousness?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's, I guess, where you think about Krishna a lot. So, boy.
All right then.
Now where should we go from here?
Well,
we don't have phones, so.
At least not yet.
Got any exciting news to report? Any fun things happen in your past
to
week?
talk
Anything
about?
neat happening with your organization, John?
We did get a letter from Debbie Mason.
Oh yeah.
I could read part of it.
Debbie Mason is the contact person that we've been talking to as a go-between to the 2 families in Santa Fe, Texas, who brought the suit against that school district, the thing that the Supreme Court just ruled on.
And remember, we took a picture, an ACA group picture, and we sent copies of the picture to the 2 Doe families and also a copy to Debbie Mason. And she sent me an email to thank me, and she said, I want to thank you all for the picture and banner, because we made a big banner that said thank you on it. It was a nice surprise. I know that means the Doe families, will be surprised and as thrilled as we were to get your package. my granddaughter, who is 6, said, "Grandma, they sent you this because of your stand on religion." I said, "Yes." She said, "They are really good people." What else? She went on to say, "I noticed a lot of children in your picture, and to them I want them to know what an honor it was to get this picture. Some of them may be young and may not understand a lot of the things said to them, or sometimes the hate towards non-believers. To each of you young children and teens, I say to you, I am proud you have stood your ground. I am proud that you have a belief in yourself." So that was real thoughtful. And it's real important to point out that this Debbie Mason is not an atheist, and neither are the two Doe families in the case, which you said earlier. Debbie Mason is a Baptist, but this is an example of us. Sometimes we get accused on the show, sometimes of slamming Christians, but...
Do you have the picture of us in the newsletter there?
No,
Can you zoom
I
in on
don't. We only had 3 prints made, and
Okay.
all 3 of those got sent off.
But it's us standing in a park with a huge banner
Right.
saying thank you.
Yeah, we probably ought to get Rodney to get another picture made.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I want to
Put that on our website.
Yeah.
I want to point out that when CNN last week reported the story of the Supreme Court's ruling, there was video of some of us that were up there protesting, and on the website there was a still. It showed me with my sign, and my friend Dennis, who was there with his sign, and Amanda with her sign.
Oh.
Those are the ones I recognized, but
Yeah.
there were a whole bunch of people there, and that was a very positive, worthwhile thing to do. It's not like we influence the Supreme Court, but hopefully we help to raise some awareness about these issues.
And it wasn't happening right around the corner. You had to sit in the
Now,
car
that was a
drive.
long drive.
Quite a ways.
Oh boy, that was a long drive.
Well, we appreciate you doing that. The decision itself is extremely significant. Attorney General of Texas, John Corian, I don't know if I'm saying that right, had asked in his remarks that the Supreme Court clarify this issue. I guess he and some of the other governors and people felt like there was a lot of ambiguity in former rulings about prayer in school and what they could or couldn't do. And this ruling this is not considered a liberal court. It was very clear, 6-3, and they just drew the line very well. Don't do it. It's not right. It violates the Constitution. Don't do it.
I think the specific language was that it sends the message to non-adherents in the audience that they are outsiders and that they are not welcome.
And boy, haven't we felt that.
I
Yeah.
see that we have some more people who might be interested in coming up here and sitting with the group.
come
There
join
are
us.
chairs in the conference room. Just go out straight down the hall into the conference room and drag in a chair.
Yes.
Boy, we were afraid we wouldn't have enough bodies to
Yeah.
this chair today, but the word apparently got out, and,
Yeah. So
atheists are out in force today. This is great.
But
One
Jeff-
more comment on the Supreme Court ruling. I read a quote in the newspaper from Gary Bauer of
Oh,
Focus
boy.
on the Family, etc., commenting on the fact that a number of the justices that voted on the majority side in this were Reagan-Bush appointees, and he said, we have to get a lot more serious about our appointees. And
Which means we
I
need
would
to get a
agree
lot
with
more like prejudiced ones.
Right.
Yeah.
I would agree with Gary in that statement.
yeah.
Oh,
Although,
could you stand up for just a second?
Not in
Could
quite
you get
the same way.
Close up on her shirt.
yeah.
I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. Let's tighten up. Yeah. There
What
we
would
go.
Zena do? That's awesome.
Who was it? Was it Russell? Were you the one who came up with the alternate "What would Jesus do" shirt? Well, on the back it says "Piss everyone off and get nailed to a cross." Yeah, that's another.
Another interesting thing brought by Janet today is this ad for that was in the Statesman.
Oh, this is hilarious.
Saturday. It's an ad for a local group. Oh, it's for Promise Land, which is a huge church here in town. I'm not sure exactly what brand of Christians they are, but this ad says, "The Austin Awakening. Only 10% of Austin is attending church on Sunday, but that is changing now." But first of all, I want to thank that 90%.
Yeah.
Good going,
keep it up.
folks.
Yeah.
There is a spiritual power that has hit this city. Please, for heaven's sake, respond.
Okay, I think we ought to.
And then we're responding right now.
Yeah.
And then it says Sunday night surge, 6:30 p.m. The Promised Land, and it gives an address and their email address or their web address. This is amazing. www.wap.com. What is up with that? And finally, it says there's a quote at the bottom. It says, "Our God is an Austin God." And I'm going, wow, that's like back in the days of ancient Greece, they had city gods. Like there was Athens had Athena was like the patron god of that city, and each city had its own god. And now these guys have come up with a god of Austin.
Yeah.
And
so they worship Stevie Ray then,
wait, there's some article.
or
here,
just
too.
this nebulous sort of spiritual
this- what is
deity
this
holding
thing
a
that-
shiner.
It's about other
Something
cities
about
named
Sodom and Gomorrah. Wait a minute.
Other cities named Austin.
You would think that
Oh.
the Almighty God would do a little better than 10% in a teeny tiny little newspaper ad.
Yeah. You think that God would have a better budget than that, but maybe not.
Well, Jeff, I got something to say about that
Yes, sir.
case. And I don't think that anybody should get the idea that this is going to make school prayer go away.
No.
Oh
Because
no.
all that's going to happen is they're going to come up with increasingly sophisticated ways to try to get around what to us is a very clear statement by the Supreme Court about the role of school, prayer in school. And they made it real clear in that case that you're completely welcome to pray on your own. You can pray at lunch. You can do all the praying you want. You can carry Bibles and all this kind of stuff. And you can bet that there's going to be some way to wiggle around that. In fact, when we were taping a couple weeks ago, when we were getting ready to tape the other show, the Freethinkers Forum, I got on that FCA website, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes website, and I was looking around on there to grab a few things off to talk about. And I can't remember the exact terms that they use, but their word for school prayer is something like secular solemnization or something like that. And they're actually trying to pass off prayer as being
Secular.
secular.
That is so nuts.
Okay.
And I can't remember the exact wording of it, but
Okay, I was afraid we were going to have this problem. The mics aren't picking up the crowd too well, so I'm going to lean forward and just pass this one around. Oh, Vic is flipping out. Oh,
Stay there, I'll do the mics.
oh okay. So
Just
he's going
speak
to.
louder, folks.
All right.
Go ahead, John.
so anyway.
Damn, Vic. Vic, you sound like Pat Robertson when the ruling came down. No! It's like, ah.
Well, he is in charge of the mics.
I know he is, but it was very entertaining.
So, John, you were saying. I was afraid we were going to fill airtime, but this is going to be great. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
All I'm trying to say is, be watching. There's going to be some new strategy that they're going to try to put together to try to keep prayer in school.
Yeah.
Because there are schools right now and districts, they don't care what the Supreme Court says. They haven't cared in the past with the appeals courts and all the other courts.
There was a school district in Florida that immediately came out and said, we're going to go right ahead until
and what they
we
need
get
to do in
stopped.
that case is they need to send in the U.S. Marshals or the National Guard or whoever it is
Yeah.
and start making some arrests and start laying down the law. There's
Yeah.
no point in having a Supreme Court that makes decisions about the way we're gonna live that are supposed to be for everybody in the nation, and then have these people just basically say, forget it. I do not understand why that's allowed to happen, except that because they're Christians and this
Special
is supposedly a
treatment.
Christian
Yeah,
nation,
that's
they can
right.
get away with it. Because
Yeah.
I guarantee if it was us doing it, the troops would be there to make arrests.
There is a word for just rejecting the authority of our government and doing
Yeah.
what you want, and that word is treason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then I was surprised several years ago when Jesse Helms made some statement about President Clinton traveling to his state, and he made some statement about he better watch out if he comes down here. And I just don't understand how he could get away with that, because if you or I said, hey, you better watch out if you come to Austin, they would come and
Be in
visit
jail.
you.
Yeah.
And they would have a serious sit down and talk with you in some little dark room about what you meant by that.
Yeah.
I don't understand how some people are able to.
Yeah, how you say that about the president? He
Yeah,
better
get away with it.
Well, I think he was sort of rebuked for that. It's like,
You
Jesse,
should
that
have been
was
arrested for it.
well. Yeah. Well, he
And
just
and
needs
somebody
to
needs to
retire.
say thank you to the ACLU, who
Exactly.
over the years is one of a few groups that has. I mean, they've been willing to stand up for lots of unpopular ideas, and they're sure right about this one. And they stood up and they provided the lawyers for these people, and I think they did an excellent job of it. The guy they were up against for the American Center for Legal Justice or Liberty
Yeah.
and Justice was Jay Sekulow, who is one of the best of the lawyers for the Christian point of view, or it's not the Christian point of view. It's the public prayer,
Yeah.
public prayer in school.
Well,
point of view.
Sekulow is a fundamentalist Christian. Yeah.
I don't doubt it, and he
Yeah,
is,
I've
he is
seen
a
him. He's
superb arguer
Yeah.
of their point of view,
Yeah.
and I think it speaks well for the issues, the right and wrong involved. That the finding was so clear and strong. But as John said, there will be a backlash over this.
Yeah.
There's people that
Of
are
course.
upset, and they just can't understand how the government's going to abuse them this way, and not let them have public prayer at high school graduation and high school football games where it just ought to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we've always done it in the past.
Say what you will about evolution. Religion evolves.
It sure
Yeah.
does.
You know, when faced with a new obstacle, these guys are going to mutate their strategy
Yeah.
to try to take advantage of whatever loopholes they can find, and yeah, well, it'll keep going to the Supreme Court, and it'll keep getting swatted down like it always has.
Yeah, it's well, you know, it's interesting. Don, the point you brought up was that as good an arguer as Sekulow is, or may be, I haven't really heard him, you know, declaiming the Christian point of view too much. I mean, I've seen him like on TV appearances on TBN and stuff like that. But the point remains that there were some hard questions that were fronted to him when he was speaking before the Supreme Court, that, you know, if he were to be an honest man and tell the truth to these justices, you know, he really couldn't, you know, he would have had to, when he was asked, okay, you know, would you be all right with somebody getting up in front of the mic before football game and saying religion is BS? You know, would that be condoned? And he had to say that it probably would not. You know, non-religious messages, and particularly anti-religious.
He did say that in front of the Supreme Court?
I don't know what his response was, but it was indicated when an earlier news piece that appeared when they were actually in arguments about this was, you know, it mentioned that, you know, after Sekulow did part of his spiel, you know, one of the justices said, look, I don't really see a situation in which some kid being allowed to get up before a football game and say religion is bunk would be permitted. And so that makes it, you know, this whole idea, because Sekulow was, of course, trying to sell this whole thing as purely a free speech issue.
Right.
Okay. And he said, well, then free speech has, you know, it was made clear to him that free speech involves viewpoints other than your own religious dogma. And that was like, yeah, but the idea for this was that we're trying to pray. You know, and so,
Right.
yeah. So.
I've already encountered fundamentalists on the internet who are kicking around a new idea. Now, you know, the first one I've heard so far is, well, so we could like draw lots, and whoever drew the lot gets to be the speaker that day, and therefore everybody would have an equal chance to say what they wanted to say. And they may fall back to that position because they can feel pretty confident, at least in the areas where their particular religion is dominant, that almost all the time they're still going to get their say, and they can apply pressure, social pressure, to prevent the minority from really being honest and blunt about what they have to say when it's their turn.
Yeah.
So
The other tactic that they're almost
We'll
sure
see.
to take is the same tactic that the Austin City Council takes. They're not supposed to have, well, I don't know what they're supposed to have, but the Austin City Council has a prayer, but they don't have the actual meeting start officially until the prayer is over. So what they'll start to do, you'll see, is they'll have a prayer over the PA system, and they'll just say, oh, but yes, but the game hadn't started yet. They'll have an official start time for the game. And then whatever happens before that, well, throw their hands in the air. Wow, gosh, I'm sorry. Some kid just got on the mic and started talking.
Do you think that strategy would pass the Supreme Court?
For a while. What they're going to hope to do is put something together like that, which the only way you're going to get it struck down is by putting up a fight. And they have more money. And so they're going to be able to try to put these ridiculous cases together with the idea that, okay, you can try to take them on, but it's going to cost you more than you're going to get out of it.
We've got the money and we've got the lawyers.
And they're going to change the tactics enough each case so that you would have to try every single one of them, and nobody's going to be able to afford to do that.
You can actually see examples of how they operate from seeing what's already happened with the whole evolution issue. Because if you remember, I mean, back in the 20s, there were the events that led to the Scopes trial, saying you can't teach evolution at all. That got struck down. So they said, okay, you can teach evolution now, but you have to teach creation side by side. That got struck down. And then they continue just evolving until we get to the Kansas situation where they find they can get something in there as a wedge.
Sure, they're just going to keep trying.
And then this disclaimer thing, which they're trying to slip in, which also got struck down, but they keep hammering at it from different directions.
Does anybody in the crowd here have particular memories of your own youth in school, encountering weird religious dogmas inappropriately advanced at some point?
Well, I'm old enough that when I was in high school, the Supreme Court decision outlawing loudspeaker prayer in schools had already happened, but in Springwoods High School in Houston, Texas, they still had loudspeaker prayer, and they were Christian prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. And as I became more aware of my own feelings, it upset me, and it also upset me because I knew that the Supreme Court had said it was illegal, that this was violating the Constitution. But at that point, school districts were very comfortable doing that if they felt like nobody was going to sue them over it. So, I mean, to me, I think it was backlash against that as part of what made me feel the way I do today and kind of want to stand up for religious liberty and for my own personal point of view, back that up.
I never ran into any of that in school. It was, I mean, religion was just not an issue in my high school at all, period.
That's the way it should be.
And, I don't know if that's because of the attitude at the time or just the area that I was living in. I mean, it seemed like a pretty, white bread, suburban kind of generic neighborhood. I
Probably
don't
wasn't
know.
Alabama or Texas.
No, it was Chicago suburbs.
Okay.
All right.
But, so is that, I mean, okay.
Yeah,
I
not quite in the Bible
I-
Belt.
I'm just amazed by the stories I hear of what goes on in Texas.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I lived in Florida growing up, and they also had mandatory prayer over the loudspeaker when I was growing up. And I was Catholic at the time, and it wasn't a Catholic prayer. It was a, Protestant prayer. And I used to worry that I would go to hell if I said this prayer. So I would just mouth it without saying it out loud. But it was very upsetting. And we're about the same age, so I suspect it has more to do with time.
yeah.
It's coming back though, and they're just going to change the law. That's their plan, is just to change the law to make it legal.
Yeah, they're
There's
now.
a so-called religious freedom amendment.
Yeah, they're
and
trying
they
for a
have
constitutional
majority in the
amendment.
Senate and the House, and they're working on the presidency, and it's just a matter of time. So people do have to fight back.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have a lot of religious people on our side. I attended a meeting in Fort Worth of something called the Texas Faith Network, which is a bunch of religious folks who are also political activists. And when one of the main speakers was a Baptist minister, and in his remarks he included non-believers. There was no prayer at this meeting, but they spoke about their individual commitments, and beliefs and how and what they thought prayer should be. And to me, their ideas were much closer to what I read in the Bible of Jesus telling people how to pray and what it should mean. He spoke of private prayer. People who pray in public are hypocrites. They have their reward. And this Baptist minister was saying, it really bothers me them wanting to have prayer at this football game while one person's picking their nose and somebody's scratching their behind. He thought that was wrong, and it was also wrong because not everybody there is on the same page for that. And the idea of what do they call it, non-sectarian? He said, no, that's wrong. You're trying to fit a patch on here so that it so that you can do something that's really not right. People that pray before a meeting or something like that, it should be of people of one mind, and you should pray out of the set of beliefs that you grew up with. You shouldn't have to modify it or anything. And I enjoyed the meeting. I learned a lot. It was educational experience.
Right. Well, yeah, I was saying earlier when we read the news story originally, the Supreme Court's decision is not a victory for atheism, per se. I mean, certainly we are one of the groups that gets upset when our kids go to a government function and get preached at. But we're not the only group. There's Baptists and Hindus and
Catholics and Mormons.
different sects of Christians who don't agree with the prayers that are being read in those venues. All we've done is we're not pushing to have atheism taught in schools. We are pushing for the Constitution of our nation to be upheld. And the separation of church and state is not there to teach atheism in schools. It's there to keep different sects off each other's backs. Just not talking about atheism, just not talking about God is not atheism. Talking about the rational and philosophical justifications for atheism, why, that's atheism, and I don't see that happening in school. Maybe it should, but it's not, and I'm not seriously pushing for that.
Yeah.
So
Maybe it's something we could do around the flagpole or something.
We can borrow.
Okay, there's no God. Everybody got it? Okay, let's go.
We could teach critical thinking in school, though,
Yeah.
and that would be good.
And that will lead where it leads. I mean, it's not, you teach kids how to think, for example, and then what they think is what they do with whatever they think with that tool they've been given. It's not pushing atheism, it's educating.
I'd like to say something about that. And that is that a lot of times the public schools claim that they're teaching critical thinking. And if you look in the textbooks or in the curriculum guide or in the syllabus, whatever, it says things about critical thinking. But it's not really critical thinking that we know is critical thinking. Sometimes it's just defining vocabulary words or filling in the blanks. But I've seen cases in the textbooks that they're trying to push that off as critical thinking. So if you're a parent, don't think that, oh, hey, that's great, my kid's learning critical thinking skills at school because there's a worksheet on it. Take a hard look at it, and you'll see that in most cases it has nothing to do with actual critical thinking and analyzing things and looking for fallacies and that kind of thing. It's mainly just time-killing worksheets.
Yeah.
John, when you were when you came on Freethinkers Forum,
Right.
which is premiering this fall, and we were doing the subject of religion in the schools. You had some interesting information about some of the religious groups that have sort of infiltrated the schools, particularly like a Fellowship of Christian Athletes is a
Right.
really big one. I think another one's Young Life. And I don't know if you have the information with you, but you can just, out of memory, just tell people what those organizations are really up to and what their views on things are.
Well, what they really are evangelical Christian groups. But they'll say they're just Christian and they're just trying to get anybody who's interested to go, and they'll basically try to get kids to go by giving them brownies, and food is always a good draw for, especially for kids. And so that's the kind of thing that gets sucked in. But if you take the time to look into what their position statements are on things, then you'll see that what they really have is a very fundamentalist agenda. And if you get on their website and look for what they have to say about homosexuality, they'll make it real clear. It says it's a sin, and AIDS is God's punishment. And it goes on in other different subjects that have different things on there that you can look up, but it makes it real clear. This is not something that's a lot of Christians would even really want to be part of. And one of their posters they had around school years ago, they had a thing that said, well, you know, I go to church but you know, am I really a Christian? And it said on there very clearly, well, just because you've been baptized doesn't make you a Christian. And so all those people who, I can't remember all the words, it's been a number of years, but basically anybody who is Catholic would look at that and they might say, wow, this has nothing to do with us. And yet the parents might see something about FCA in the schools and think, oh, hey, you know, we're Christians. Okay, we're Catholic species of Christians, but hey, I want my kid involved in that.
Right.
And then not realize that really what it is it's a recruitment tool for evangelical churches. That's all it is.
Yeah, their ads are not going to say,
No, of course not.
We're Christians. We're the only real Christians,
Right.
and here's a laundry list of all the people who call themselves Christians that aren't really because they don't do it like we do.
It's the old bait and switch, and
Sure.
they're very good at it, and they've had years experience in the public school knowing how to draw kids in, but that's what it is. And they get them down to their churches, and they start doing the whole, you know, pressure.
Did you say
Pressure
free
thing.
brownies?
So we got Don here ready to join.
You know,
Actually, the brownies are pretty good.
you know, more and more I keep hearing. I don't know if it's new. It probably isn't, but I just keep hearing more about it. Of so and so Christian telling me that Catholics are not Christian. And this kind of scares me. A little child once that who I'm sure this is something she heard. She's a sweetheart, but she was telling. She pointed at a church and said, "That's my church," and I remembered them being Catholic and that this was a Baptist church. And I asked her, "So you're Baptist?" And she said, "No, now we're Christians now. We used to be Catholic, but now we're Christian."
Oh, boy.
And we've recently seen some. I think there was some emails sent to the group for at least one guy saying that all these other people, they're like, I think he called them secular Christians. But only the Bible believers are the true Christians, and everyone else is not a Christian.
You know what I think that is partly as a way of distancing themselves, because as atheists, when we want to point out how religion can be bad for you, we always talk about the Crusades and stuff, and now they can say, well, that was Catholics. They weren't Christians.
This is my favorite statistic. Every time this comes up, I want to drive this point home. I have here a document from the UN. It's a census of religious belief around the world, and what's interesting is that Christians, all Christians together, this is including everybody who calls themselves Christians, are the single biggest individual group on the planet. But as soon as you say that Roman Catholics are not true Christians anymore, atheists, free thinkers, and other non-believers outnumber true Christians around the world. So I love that. And I encourage the evangelicals to continue claiming that the Roman Catholics are not real Christians, because then we got them in numbers.
Well, not only that, if you say that only the Bible believers, the young Earth creationists are the only true Christians, then they become a small religion confined almost entirely to the United States, some of the tenets of which are demonstrably false.
And they could be outlawed in France.
Actually, that's one of the things that allows them to claim that Christians face persecution in modern society because they are this, small group.
Yeah, but they'll play that game both ways, right? They'll say, fastest growing religion. and then they'll
like,
oh,
we're
make
an
claims
oppressed
about most of
minority.
the people in the world are Christians, and that proves that what we believe is true, until you show them the actual statistics. In fact, you throw in Buddhists, who also don't happen to believe in a God, and non-believers in God are themselves the biggest individual group. So, you know, you can play those numbers a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Playing with numbers.
So,
There's one more thing that's kind of significant about that the Supreme Court ruling that goes beyond schools. The Supreme Court realized that when this type of activity takes place, when you have a loudspeaker prayer, that the people that are not religious or not of the same faith as the person that's giving the invocation or whatever it is, are going to feel excluded. They're going to feel left out. Now, this was in particular. This is particularly heinous when we're talking about school children. But what about if it's the Chamber of Commerce? You know, that's not it's not illegal to have an invocation at the Chamber of Commerce. But the same reasoning still applies. If you care about including everyone, if you care about making people feel like they don't belong, then, you know, maybe you should consider not having an invocation at a gathering like that, where it is still perfectly legal.
well, so again, has the Supreme Court ruled on those things? Is it simply tolerated and not been tested, or is it legal? I mean, isn't it just as much a violation of the Constitution to have that invocation at the City Council as it is to have
Well,
it in...
okay, City Council is government, Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, sorry, Chamber of Commerce.
Different private organizations.
Oh, okay.
Are not under that same
I see what you're saying.
structure.
Okay.
And many of them don't have invocations, and, you know, I'd like to encourage that.
Yeah, it's always dangerous when any individual group gets it into their heads that we're the ones over here who have the absolute truth. And, you know, even people who I tend to agree with that make that final leap to, you know, we are the ones who are absolutely certain of everything, and you've got to do everything exactly the way we say. Therefore, we're willing to force our ways on you. That's just dangerous, because nobody's omniscient. There's a certain amount of honest humility, comes in. So, you know, when you get together, think about whether just because most of you believe X, whether that's necessarily a good reason to force X on everybody else. It's not.
I think the French law that you were talking about earlier
Yeah.
is actually kind of scary, because France is a country where you have a significant fraction of atheists and a significant, very large fraction of Catholics, or at least cultural Catholics. I think in France there's a lot more people who are culturally Catholic but don't actually believe that stuff than there is in the United States. But there's a lot of actual Catholics. And it seems to me like this law is going against the principle of religious freedom, that they've been very careful to define other things than Catholicism and certain accepted varieties of Protestantism as cults, so that they can, in fact...
Well, what I like about it, in contrast to what happened in China, where the Chinese government simply said, this is going on, we don't like it, it's illegal, right? This French law at least attempts to identify a mechanism by which people are being manipulated, and it's attacking the use of that mechanism. And that's better, don't you think?
Well, I remember as a small child being exposed to the Catechism of Catholic Dogma.
Yeah.
And I consider that a form of brainwashing.
Yeah.
And I agree that in general it's nice if we keep people from brainwashing people. But the fact of the matter is, when you pass a law like that, what you're really largely doing is saying certain kinds of brainwashing are not going to be called brainwashing, and other kinds of brainwashing are going to be called.
But the immediate response from everybody here listening to a description of that law was, how come this doesn't apply to Catholicism? I'm not sure it doesn't. They claim it doesn't. I'm not sure it really doesn't.
Right. Yeah. But that's what's scary about it, because no way it's going to be enforced against Catholics.
Yeah.
Politically, that wouldn't fly.
Yeah.
But it could be enforced against us if we were there.
How's that? What do we do?
We don't have to do anything. You know how these things go.
But again, I mean, there's a mechanism, a conversion mechanism that's alluded to in the law. And if we're not doing anything like that, and we're not, and I'm glad we're not, then I'm not sure how it would be applied.
There are specific features that cults have in common, which I don't think could realistically be applied to atheism.
Yeah.
Certain form of coercion where, well, it almost always involves lots and lots of money, and it involves isolating yourself from the world. Just a variety of specific things.
Well, I think
Yeah,
one of the principal tenet, first off, one characteristic of a cult, of course, is that there is a leader who is venerated
Yeah.
and whose, views are said to be the absolute truth.
Of course, none of those things are listed in this French law as
Yeah.
indicators.
Yeah.
But it occurred to me, listening to the description of that law, that, well, okay, so if you're a Scientology group in France, what you do now is you stop manipulating people into becoming members. You can still exist. You just can't do this thing that they have declared illegal.
But of course, if you do look in the Bible and look at what Jesus was supposed to have done, he obviously was a qualifying cult leader.
I agree.
That he was basically telling
I
people
agree.
to give up their possessions, follow him, abandon their families, make this
Hate
their
your families.
whole deal in life. And he was very serious about it. And so, obviously, Jesus would have been a wacko cult leader under this law.
That's right.
Yeah.
I find it kind of scary that they would pass such a law and then not apply it to Christianity.
Well,
I've never heard
yeah,
a
but
description of cult, though, that I didn't think applied to the Catholic Church, and I think that it's just a matter of power and size.
yeah, and that's, I mean,
Yeah.
that
What's
is
this thing
something,
about-
what
what's
can be
this
done
thing about
about that?
Pope
Isn't it a
being
step in the right
infallible?
direction,
If that's
even
not
if,
how a
Exactly.
leader-
even if there isn't enforcement?
Another member of our group, Ron Weinar, makes the argument that depending on how you define a cult, you can claim that the Marine Corps is a cult.
Or the Army.
Because they,
Right.
isolate people, change their behavior, shave their heads.
What do you think boot camp's for?
Right.
Boot camp.
And-
But then he makes the distinction that a cult makes supernatural claims, and that's the distinction between the Moonies and the Marine Corps.
Yeah, but again, what I like about this French law is it doesn't talk about any of those things. It talks about here is a means of manipulating people. We're going to say that's illegal.
And I'm not saying the
And-
law is in itself bad, but
Right.
the way it's going to be used is clearly
Sure, but I
discriminatory.
mean, we have separation of church and state. Look at how that's used in our country.
Yeah.
Largely,
What
the
scares me
religious
about
groups
it-
still get away with it.
If that law was enacted here, what would scare me about that is that it doesn't matter what it says, it doesn't matter what we do. Yeah, I know we're not a cult, but I was just, a while ago I was talking about FCA, talking about prayers being secular. There's another word, but even have the word secular in there. When you're dealing with evangelical Christians, black is white, 2 + 2 is 5. They can make anything, be whatever they want it to be. And if they were
They claim
in power,
humanism is a religion.
Right.
Yeah,
We would
they
be-
claim atheism as a religion
Right.
and evolution as a religion. One characteristic of cults also that it's identified by Michael Shermer in Why People Believe Weird Things, and I think Rowan supports this view too, is that probably, if you wanted to be generous to some degree, could get Christianity and the Roman Catholic Church and even the Marine Corps to some, off the hook, would be hidden agendas. The real purpose of the organization is not revealed to either the public or particularly the people whom they're trying to convert. And as Rowan said, if you want to ask any Christian what Christianity's all about, he'll sit there and he'll tell you the whole thing. He'll give you the whole, like he calls it, the dead guy on a stick story, and what it's all about. And Jesus died for you, and this and that, and join our church, and you'll get to heaven, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I also think that most young guys who want to become a Marine, unless they're just completely stupid, they know that if you're going to sign up for that, you better be ready for an ass whipping. That's just what becoming a Marine is all about. It's
Rome uses that example because he is a former Marine.
yeah. So there are certain characteristics.
See,
of,
they always deny that it's a cult.
Right, that's another characteristic.
but
But you don't think the leaders of those organizations don't have hidden agendas?
oh no, I think they do. I mean,
Sure
for
they
example,
do.
if you take something like FCA, where or just the whole wolf in sheep's clothing attitude towards a lot of these school-oriented, they're not churches per se, but they're
Really
Christian
wealthy.
organizations that try to get into the schools where they come off all nicey nice, and actually then when you get in there, you realize a lot of their, the anti-gay agendas or this whole thing that, or maybe there's even a self-delusion aspect to it, where you have, Well, the piece that was on 2020 about a month or so ago, in which there is in Texas this Baptist student organization, and they tried to get kids to like come to their cookouts or their this or that other little thing they're going to have, and then they exert just the power of peer pressure to convert kids to Christianity, and specifically, and they don't tell, and specifically they're looking for kids who are members of other religions like Jews. And they don't tell you, of course, what they tell you is, hey, come to our cookout, we're going to have a great thing this weekend. They're not going to say, come to our cookout and get converted to Christianity.
I just want to make a comment right now.
Yeah.
I had a cookout last night, and I didn't try to convert anybody. Of course, everybody who was there was already an atheist.
Yeah, so, preaching to the choir. But so there is,
I invited some non-atheist friends of mine, but they didn't show.
They were afraid they were going to get converted.
I wouldn't have.
either that or get barbecue.
I hang out with them all the time.
Yeah, but you did burn animals on the altar, didn't you?
Yeah,
Then we ate them. We didn't hand them off to any god.
no. Well, except for my Springer Spaniel, I had to give her an offering when I got home. So individual, like, I would say particularly the student-oriented Christian groups that try to get into the schools under the guise of just, let's have fun, kids. Those clearly have hidden agendas. The religion itself, though, I mean, if you walk into any Christian church and say, "What are you guys about?" Oh, they'll happily tell you.
And
Everything.
I mean, given those two criteria, they tell you what it's really all about, and they don't use any unfair manipulative practices to get you to believe it. I can't imagine any organization that fit those two criteria that I would have a problem with.
Yeah.
Some people are just dumb. They're going to believe dumb stuff.
Yes.
Okay, fine. They can have those. That's their right to believe that stuff. They haven't been manipulated. They haven't been lied to. Okay, fine.
Would you call hell manipulative?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I would say lying to people about the existence of a certain punishment that they have to try to avoid. I'd call that a manipulative practice.
Although you could make the argument that someone who genuinely believes that this place called hell exists,
if they already believe it,
yeah,
sure.
I mean, a minister or a preacher in a Christian church really believes that there's such a place as hell.
Right.
If he tells a prospective convert that hell is a punishment for not joining the fan club, he's not technically lying because to him. I mean, because he really believes hell exists.
But he's doing it sincerely.
Yeah. I mean, he's honestly mistaken. Yeah.
right.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, he's being honest. What he believes is wrong, but
that we live in a culture where there are people who believe a whole bunch of really wacky, dumb things on no evidence whatsoever. That is not, it has been the fault of the religiousness of our society.
Yeah.
But I don't expect them to fix that. I expect our culture to fix that.
Yeah.
And that's our responsibility. If these groups want to take advantage of those beliefs, okay, fine.
Well, except
there's nothing that can be done about that other than education.
if we did have one of these laws like the French have, I think it would apply to the Catholic Church. It would
I
apply
agree.
to most Christian churches. They are manipulative and abusive, and they take minor children and they brainwash them,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons why they're so effective.
Yeah.
And-
Particularly this boy on that appeared on the 2020 piece. He was this young Jewish boy who was like in the process for preparing for his bar mitzvah, and suddenly he goes to this thing, and it's like he's converted to Christianity before he kind of even realizes what happened to him. And then it's like he said, I got home, and then I was like really kind of bothered by what happened, and then because he deconverted, and now he's a Jew again, and is preparing for his. But it was just like,
Kind of makes you think that conversion doesn't actually mean anything. I mean, if you were an ancient Greek, then converting means suddenly you don't have one patron god, you have another patron god.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just this vague sort of thing in your mind that you're a Jew or a Christian.
It's so easy to scare kids with hell, though.
But does this law distinguish between people who are converted from something else and people who are just simply marinated in it as children?
No, I don't. No, this law I don't think does. It'd be nice if we had a law like that, though.
Just the language, like I said, the description of mental manipulation is specifically exercising within a group whose activities are aimed at creating or exploiting psychological dependence, heavy and repeated pressure on a person, or using techniques likely to alter his judgment so as to induce him to behave in a way prejudicial to his interests.
Wow. This sounds like Christianity to me.
Yeah,
me too.
Sure does.
Within a group, sounds like it's therefore excluding proselytizing, because that's going to people outside the group.
Yeah, it does.
Locking people in once you've already got them as members.
Yeah. But then they threw in I guess maybe that's why they threw in the extra, and you can't proselytize either thing here too.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Or
It does
no,
say
it likes-
that.
they
It says it sets up some areas where you can't do it.
Yeah, like in your schools, old folks' homes, hospitals, retirement homes, schools, hospitals, or retirement homes. And they can't open missions. And presumably they,
Right.
it's like pretty much eat and
Right.
sleep, and that's about all they can do. But
Well,
So they can't
Interesting.
proselytize, but they can do that to the people that are already members.
no.
No, they can't
If
do
you
that.
do that to people who are already your members, then you can't proselytize in those places or set up missions.
Okay.
yeah,
Is what it says.
so right.
I don't know. It's an interesting experiment. I think their intent is in the right place,
Yeah.
and I'm interested to see what happens.
And it's a
If it
legitimate
goes
concern.
wrong, then it was a failed
Yeah.
failed experiment.
And it is a legitimate concern that the language could be construed as being sufficiently vague as to be, lead to some sort of abuse at some point. I mean, you could get a group of, people who are Jerry Lewis film fans, and they're like, come to one of our movie nights, and they're like, ah, you're trying to convert me.
I'm kind of interested in who supports this law.
Well,
So, is this basically a Defense of Catholicism Act?
No, it's the article talks about how reservations have been expressed by the Catholic Church.
yeah.
But
They're worried.
I think that it is in response to increased concerns recently in Europe, particularly like France and Germany, about groups specifically like Scientology and the Moonies. The people who really are going out there and they're being very, blatant about, going out and, let's bring people in. And then I think also if the group has a negative reputation that precedes them from the U.S., because Scientology's gotten a great deal of bad press over here. Why? This group tries to set up shop in Europe.
I am more startled by the degree of good press they've gotten over here.
Well,
It's too bad our phones aren't working because I wonder if we have any Scientologists in the audience.
yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
It's a darn shame. I guess they've just given up on the phones, trying to work on them. Sorry, folks.
I once found myself in the strange predicament of chatting with this guy over the internet who was a Muslim, only he had recently been targeted for conversion by some Scientologist friends. And he was asking me what I knew about the Church of Scientology. So I told him. And I wound up urging this guy to stick with his Islam. I don't know that much about Islam. All I know is it's got to be better than Scientology.
Well, they're
Two evils.
putting that guy on trial in Egypt, so.
Well, yeah, but even given that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I expect from any nation that's 90% one thing or another.
Yeah.
It's bad, but it's not like shockingly evil like the practices that I regularly hear about the Scientologists.
Well, one thing you should be aware of is that one of their practices is to be extremely litigious and to sue people who say things like that.
Yeah.
So watch it.
Okay? I'll be careful.
Yeah. But there's still a bunch of idiots.
Oh, your ass is grass.
They won a
And not only
case
that,
recently, by the
Battlefield
way.
Earth really stank.
And it bombed. I mean, yeah.
The Scientologists won a big case recently. There was a woman, okay, now I hope I get my facts straight. There was a woman in Florida who had fled the group and then got ill and was taken back into custody by Scientologists and held at this place to recuperate for a while. And she got worse, and then they took her many miles away to go to a Scientologist doctor rather than taking her to a closer hospital to get treatment. And she died. And the case was blaming the Church of Scientology for this woman's death. And they won that case. And I'm somewhat puzzled.
Yeah. Do you remember
They won that case. Or it was
I remember
dropped
hearing
or
about that
something.
case. I didn't hear that they won it.
Yeah, that was just recent.
Possibly won it.
Kind of got lost in all the Supreme Court stuff, but
Did it go all the way to the
Well,
Supreme Court?
I mean, they may have had
The
a defense
Scientologist
like,
case? No.
we didn't
okay.
really know she was that sick, so we didn't know it was a big
Yeah.
risk to
It
make
might
her
have
wait
been
until we
something
got
like
to the
that.
other doctor.
Yeah.
Or maybe
plus,
they drowned the judge's
as far
dog
as
in
I
a
know-
pool, what they have been said to do in other cases that you're in.
As far as I know, it's still a patient's right also to refuse treatment.
Yeah.
And so if they had converted her to a sense to where she can say that I do not want treatment from this group or that group,
Right.
then
Yeah,
That's
but
her
once
right.
If I were the
you're conscious that you're
prosecutor, I would-
dying, you can't
Yeah.
refuse or accept treatment one way or the other. I mean, if you're unconscious,
Yeah.
then
I don't
it's kind
know
of the
those details.
responsibility of the person taking care of you to give you treatment.
And if I were the prosecutor in that case, I would
Right.
say, but wait, didn't she leave the group at one point?
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fishy.
So, yeah, I'd have
It is
to do a little more research on that.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So,
Yet another reason to designate a durable power of attorney for health care while you're still healthy. So that your
And not in a
religious,
cult.
your
Not in a cult.
religious group can't just take that
there's no
power
point
over.
delegating that power of attorney to your cult.
Right.
Phew, they told me. Well, so what else is going on? Oh, there's some interesting news. We got a whole bunch more people coming to Godless Gamers now. Like, 4 more? How many? Well, you don't know how many were new. There were like at least 3 new people at the group that just heard about it and came on over.
Yeah.
And now I'm worried I've got too many people in my role-playing campaign.
Oh, well.
So what we need is even more people so we can still have a board game group on the side.
or we can have factions.
Or well, if we're going to do that, we need another game master.
Splinter
Or
groups.
I could alternate weeks. I could run 2 campaigns and alternate weeks with 2 smaller groups. That's another possibility. This will all be discussed on Monday.
Oh, well.
I'm sure there's a solution. But it was great. I mean, that spin-off group is going wonderfully. We get together, we play games and have fun and don't talk about atheism. And then when
Not much,
we're
anyway.
relaxing, we set the game stuff aside and we talk about atheism. It's key.
It's good to hang out with other atheists.
It is.
Same jokes are funny.
Yeah.
You know, Jeff,
We had a real good time over at my place last night. At least I know I did.
I've noticed that that's the case, that when people in this group get together to do other things, like it sounds like in your case with the Godless Gamers, or when some of us went up to Fort Worth and did the Democratic Convention thing,
Or our trip out to Enchanted Rock.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
or
We should do that
or to
again.
Comfort, or any of the other things that we've done, I've noticed that there's not really any discussion of atheism. Very little. There may be some talk about what somebody in the group is doing or whatever, but it's not like that's what people concentrate on.
No, it's
I think that's
not. I mean,
kinda interesting.
having a bunch of people together of like mind, obviously things in the news are going
Right.
to come up, relevant issues and get discussed a little bit. But, like any other group, I don't think this is different with atheists, but in any group, if you're together with a bunch of people that you have shared interests with, it's
Yeah.
more relaxing. You don't have to worry that anything you say is going to rub everyone the wrong way. Not that you could tell this by being a participant in our email list. Which is the place where atheists go to beat up on each other, apparently.
That's turned into a really weird snake pit almost.
But it's fun, though. I came in last week, and I was telling everybody, one of my favorite things about being an atheist and a member of this group is there's always something to get riled up about. There's always a cause, always an issue, always some new lunatic on the mailing list saying something wacky and having to be disputed.
Yeah.
Well, atheists think ideas are important.
That's right.
It's just
Yes.
it's the way we all are.
We just had a thing happen recently. Andy Esquivel posted some hearsay thing he'd gotten from a friend, and in response to an ongoing discussion. And then I asked him for references to support this friend's contention. And he went away and he tried to find him, and he came back and said couldn't find him. I guess what my friend said is probably not true. And I don't want to get into what the actual discussion is because it's very contentious, and that there are valid points to be made on either side, regardless of whether Andy's hearsay from his friend was true or not. But the fact that I'm talking to a person who, when asked for references, goes and tries to find him and doesn't find him and comes back and seriously is willing to change his mind because the information he was operating on turns out not to be true. That is so refreshing. You just don't get that in other kinds of groups of people. I just, it does my heart good.
But an
My
outgrowth.
preacher told me that there was not enough dust on the moon.
That's right.
But as an outgrowth of that one particular discussion, I really feel like ACA needs to sponsor a single atheist type group. Need to help poor Vic out. He's a great guy. He's good with kids, good with animals.
Yeah. Okay. For those of you in the audience, the argument is about prostitution.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
We're pulling for you, Vic.
So you don't have to. Yeah. Oh boy. Well, this has suddenly gotten very interesting.
Insert joke here.
What can we do to take spotlight off of poor Vic? What else is going on?
Well, we're gonna go look at dogs today.
One more camera for you. Come on.
We're going down to the doggy zoo after this.
The doggy zoo?
Yeah,
What do you mean? What is the
town-like
doggy
animal
zoo?
shelter.
Oh.
And
yeah.
look at puppies down there. I think
Oh.
our dog needs a little
Yeah.
friend to play.
Oh, that's so
That's
cute.
time.
They're
Always good to
atheists,
make
you
it
know.
clear that atheists like puppies too.
That's right.
You like soft furry things.
Yes, we're not the dogless atheists.
I had a
This dog is God spelled backwards.
I had a
Yes.
participant at my cookout last night ignore my instruction not to bring pets and bring their little cute ferret, which was nice, and I didn't have the heart to.
I never
take him
saw
out
your
yet.
cat. I guess
Huh?
I never saw your cat.
He was back in the
Ferret
bedroom.
got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not bring my dog specifically.
Yeah.
She would have enjoyed it. But
Yeah, I know.
and with the ferret around, it might
We
have
can
been.
do a pet-oriented thing some other
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
where I won't bring my cat because he'll freak out.
But you could bring pictures of your cat.
Sure,
That's right.
sure.
Okay.
Well, we're on the
Home stretch.
The home stretch of the show, right?
So let's find something really provocative
Downhill
and annoying
portion.
to talk about in the last 13
boy,
minutes.
it's so sad. Though, folks, I appreciate each and every one of you that stayed on and watched us, even though you couldn't vent when we said stuff that pissed you off.
Yeah. I just don't know
It's
about
a technical problem. We'll have the phones next time, I'm
You
sure.
could come in with a phone and pretend to be a Christian.
Yeah.
I know how they talk.
Wasn't there a discussion of renaming the show the Last Minute Technical Problem Show?
Oh.
Just kidding. Just
Yeah. Well, the phone thing is bewildering. I mean, this has happened now just about every single.
Well, we've had
Sunday
it's
for
different
about the last-
problems. We've had trouble with the speakers in
Uh-huh.
here over which we hear the callers.
So it's not
But Vic was
necessarily the-
informing me this morning that he had that worked out. The problem this
But
time is we
fixing
just
that-
don't have callers.
Yeah.
So that doesn't help at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well.
But we are improving. I mean, it may not seem that way, but we inherit the studio in whatever condition it's in when we get here. And if everything is all screwed up and systems are broken or down or whatever, it's not our fault. We do the best we can.
It's fun to try.
Yeah, and we are learning more all the time.
yeah.
I would
But
like
when the
to.
phone system is just down, not a lot we can do.
I'd like to make a comment on a previous show. Not long ago, Paul was on, and he was talking about a book. And it wasn't necessarily an atheist book, the Guns, Germs,
Guns,
and Steel.
Germs, and Steel.
And
By Jared
so I went and got it. Great read. A lot of good information in there. I mean, it just explains an awful lot of things that I hadn't really thought about it. How civilization got to be the way it was in the way it did.
There's a lot of book loaning going on. I just
Yeah.
loaned Paul another book last
Well,
night.
we like ideas.
Did you bring the one I asked to borrow from you?
Indeed.
You did? Good. I don't suppose you started on
Not yet.
Lord of Light yet.
I'll
I loaned
see.
Paul a science fiction book that was very inspirational to me as a kid. Okay.
We got the new newsletters.
New newsletters,
They'll be
yay!
down at the bagel shop.
All right.
And is there any group news that we need to alert people to?
There is something about Freethinkers Forum,
Yay.
plugging that show and pointing out that there does need to be people who help. There's a nice picture of Paul Wilson.
Yeah. And we have been getting that.
Is there such a
incidentally. Our last,
I'd just like to read part of
you're
this.
looking very academic.
I'd just like to read this since we do have time. It says, before each show, the crew checks the microphones to make sure everything is working. This involves having each guest speak
A bit of a
in turn.
stretch.
The funny thing is, even talkative and highly opinionated atheists find it hard to speak on command. Then there's a picture of Paul Wilson. It says underneath, Paul Wilson has a moment of silence before the show.
Because he doesn't have many during the show. That's a good thing.
I think it's really strange that when we do that, we have everybody check the mics. As soon as it's your turn to talk, you can't think of anything to say. Books, stacks of books next to you that all kinds of points you want to make when you're on the air.
Actually, I think we've been getting better. Every show that and the last one was, I think, the best one so far, where we actually had a crew. I mean, the appeal to please come out and help out. We suddenly going from no one on the cameras to about 6 people behind the scenes helping out. It was terrific. And we've all been getting more comfortable with the format. Basically, just to let folks know what you're going to be in for with the new show. It's not a call-in show, as this one is supposed to be.
But is it today?
But it's actually, the new show is kind of what this one turned into this morning, which is I host and I moderate a panel of 4 atheists every show, and we have a specific subject that we talk about.
Would you like to announce when the next taping is going to be?
The next taping is going to be the 29th of this month, so this coming week, this coming Thursday, I believe.
Yes.
And we're going to be doing the second part of our show discussing the arguments for God that Christianity likes to advance and why those are logically and philosophically flawed in many ways. And it's actually our first 2-parter, and I have a feeling that as some of our subjects get more advanced, we'll probably have shows where, we'll take more than one episode to really discuss a subject in detail and do it justice. The purpose of the show is to kind of give viewers an idea of what atheists really do think about stuff, because there's a great deal of misunderstandings and who atheists are and what the view is about various things. And so this is an opportunity to say, okay, well, listen to us talk and hear what we have to say on certain subjects. For example, we did a show on religion in the schools. And we've done a show, Arguments for God, and we're going to be doing, probably our next 2-parter will be the evolution show, where we really talk about what it is and what it says, and what the precepts of it are, and why evolution and science are not competing religions to religion. And then I suspect the future, people are always advancing ideas for subjects, and they're great. We're going to do a show on, one I'm looking forward to will be atheist family values, where I want to have at least 4 atheist parents and 4 atheist kids on, and talking about why you don't have to have supernatural beliefs to. It's always interesting to me how Christianity wants to claim this monopoly on family values, when if you actually read the Gospels, Jesus was the most anti-family guy to come down the pike, and
Here's a guy
discussing, Thank you, Howard.
going around with 12 men,
Yeah.
30 years old, hanging around with 12
Yeah,
others.
didn't leave home till he was in his 30s. We know all about that.
That sure would. But
So that's so anyway, just different topics are going to be advanced, and we're going to try to have as many shows as we can in the can for when the new ACAC, the cable access season, starts up in September, October. Vic knows the exact date. So we'll have a library of them, and hopefully we'll end up having maybe about 24 or 18 or 24 total. And the nice thing also about the fact that it's just a discussion roundtable panel format program is it's not timely. We don't read news. We don't have announcements. And so since they're general topics, these can be rerun ad infinitum and for people to get this information. And so very excited about it.
It's a nice format, and since you come in knowing what the topic is going to be and not expecting it to be a call-in show, then people have sets of things to say. We can discuss topics for long enough and in depth enough that it's not quite as much responding to the calls and all too often having to say the good things that too many people don't know. And we can do some of that, but also get to things that maybe most people don't know.
Right.
And it's nice to be able to do some of this in-depth exploration of a topic.
Yeah, and
Well, that's great. We are all looking forward to that show.
I really am.
Yeah. We are going to probably, since we're getting more comfortable with the format and the show is becoming smoother and slicker as we get more used to it, I think the plan is we are going to retape the premiere episode.
Oh, okay.
The first one, so that we, because we were all kind
There
of...
were a couple of technical problems.
Yeah, we were.
on that.
Lighting was very dark, and we were all kind of stammering and weren't quite sure how it was. But now it's gotten a lot easier, and so we're going to retape that. So the whole season, the whole season's worth, as it were, of the new one should be fine.
Is that show going to be available on internet, on spring.net?
I do not know about that.
I'm sure we can arrange that.
We can probably arrange that. That's up
It's
to
not that
Vic.
expensive.
Yeah. You could probably arrange to have a tape service available, like maybe through the
We
ACA
technically
website.
got that for this show.
Okay.
It's just that with the state that our library is in.
Yeah. Well, that's
it
what I
can
would like to be able
difficult
to
for
have
people to
is
get
a-
access to the tapes they want.
Yeah, people, if anybody wants to get a half-inch or VHS copy of any Freethinkers Forum episode, they could probably be able to order it off the website. That would
Thank
be
you,
nice.
Martin.
Wow.
I want to thank everybody for getting up early on a Sunday morning and coming down here to be on camera. We appreciate each and every one of you. I have
Yay, us.
I have an embarrassing admission. I don't know how many of you came down here because of my promise of a free "We don't hate you, we just think you're wrong" button, which I announced on the mailing list. I hope most of you, because I want to take credit for the great turnout we have today. But due to technical problems beyond our control, the button company did not come through with their shipment of buttons on Thursday or Friday, like they swore up and down they would. So I haven't got buttons for you right here, right now. But
All right, everybody, get him.
there are some that were made. There were quite a few that were made last week that Michelle has in our. Will have at the meeting this morning, and as many of those that there are, I will acquire and hand them out to you guys. Make sure to get back to me next week to get your button if you don't get one at the bagel shop this morning, okay? And wear them proudly.
Yeah.
All right, we are just now descending toward the end of the show. Vic, you can. Are we going to have closing music and stuff? Sure. Cool. Yeah. Let's make sure we have the closing music and so on. Everybody, thanks for watching. I know it's still a couple of minutes left, but
Let me tell you about a phone call I took last week as phone
All right.
screener.
Sure.
Because
Oh, yeah.
I think a bunch of us take turns screening the phones when we actually have them.
Yeah, this is a good one to
And,
wrap up with.
People don't always want to actually go on the air. They just want to. I mean, I had one guy one time who just called and chatted with me for about 15 minutes. But last week I was taking a turn as the phone screener, and some lady called in and she started with, "Y'all are atheists," which is a common way to start. I said yes, and she said, "That is so funny." And I said, "Why is it funny?" And she said, "'Cause there's a God." So I said, "Well, that's a matter of opinion." She said, "Well, haven't you read the Bible?" I said, "Actually, I have." So she said, "Well, how can you not believe then?" I said, "Well, I've also read Alice in Wonderland, but I don't believe in talking white rabbits." So I said, "Okay, do you want to go on the air or not?" And she said, "Oh, I don't think so. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pray for you." I said, "Thank you very much. We appreciate that." And I hung up.
I like Keith Barker's advice. If somebody says to you that they'll pray for you, ask them for $20. Because the point of prayer is that it's supposed to actually do some good. And if they want to actually do some good, they can shell over some cash. If they're not willing to actually do something that for sure does good, praying, going off by themselves and telling themselves they're helping you when they're not really doing anything is worse than useless. Okay, everybody, camera got bumped there somehow. Everybody, thanks for watching. Austin, we love you. We're not Satanists. We don't believe in him either.
Anyway, well, tune in next week when maybe we'll have phones.
Hopefully we will do the phone thing. Next week will be the 2nd.
That's right.
I don't know if we have guests scheduled. If we do, why, we'll see.
Find out.
No guest is scheduled at this time.
Between now and
one else. And everybody, wave goodbye.
Christians,
We don't
we don't hate
you.
you.
We just think you're wrong. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Espero que disfruten este programa. Mi nombre es Liliana Hernández, soy instructora de yoga de la GFU. El día de hoy vamos a tocar el tema, el desarrollo espiritual del ser humano. Este desarrollo espiritual está relacionado con la evolución del mismo. La evolución del ser humano ha sido posible gracias a miles y miles de años de trabajo y de esfuerzo por parte de la naturaleza. Vamos a dividir esta evolución en tres aspectos principalmente.